Hello and welcome back. Again, my name is Cole Blair. I'm the lead biologist with Wildlife Preservation Canada's Native Pollinator Initiative, and this is another installment um, of a series of videos that we're doing all about bumblebees and the work we do with them. Um, and where we left off, we were talking about different aspects of our program, including community science, and specifically with BumbleBeeWatch, which again is a North American-wide community science platform tasked explicitly with the monitoring and conservation of bumblebees. So um, similar in purpose to other platforms like iNaturalist, except exclusively for bumblebees. And by contributing this data either through community science programs or just in your own time, um, you're contributing to a greater and growing body of bumblebee monitoring data that experts can use in things like species assessments to monitor range changes or population changes, and then also inform policy discussions and other conservation actions. So, without further ado, this section is going to be about submitting to BumbleBeeWatch. Um, I've alluded to photographing for bumblebees for BumbleBeeWatch. These are just some brief photo tips. You don't need a dedicated professional camera to photograph bees for BumbleBeeWatch. I've only ever used my phone, perfectly fine. But some general tips: if your bee is moving around on flowers and hard to photograph and is having a hard time getting the bee to stay still, you might want to incorporate a burst or continuous photo mode, or even take a video of your bumblebee and extract clear frames from your video afterwards. Um, you can use a macro mode to get close up and really get the fine details of the bee and the different traits on, again, the head, thorax, and abdomen, which we're going to look at to identify bees um, based on their color patterns. Um, and it's good to get as much natural sunlight as possible to really enhance the colors that we see in the photographs and help us delineate different colors in the different segments. And also, should go without saying, you crop your photos before you upload them to BumbleBeeWatch, especially if they're super, super wide. So if you've got this great big photo and the bee's right down in the middle there, you can crop that down so the bee is more prominent in the photo boundaries. With that out of the way, when we're thinking about photographing bees for identification, we think about what kinds of photos should be taken. And again, this relates back to how we identify bees in general, which is by identifying the color patterns on the head, the thorax, which again is that middle part of the body where the wings and the legs attach, and then also the abdomen, which is that long part, has the stinger on the end of it, which is basically the bee's bum. So the different angles that we photographed in order to get all this information are going to be photographs of the side view, which show pretty much every single aspect here. Can show hairs on the front of the face, what color those hairs are, can show some of the pattern on the thorax, and also shows the different color bands going down the abdomen. So um, with this one here, we see um, a band of yellow, two bands of orange, and then a band of yellow, and then black at the bottom of the abdomen. The side view can also show the hind leg of the bumblebee. If you watch some of the previous installments of this little video series, you might remember that bumblebees have pollen baskets on their hind legs. So that pollen basket gives their hind legs a particular shape. And this is alluding to another installment that will be coming after this. The leg can be important to bumblebees in differentiating males from females and cuckoo bumblebees from non-cuckoo bumblebees, which we'll get to later. But side view again, good to show the face, thorax, and abdomen, and then also the leg. The back view, also similar reasons, can show a complete view of the thorax pattern, and then also, if the wings are open, a complete view of the abdominal pattern. The face view as well is important, not just for identifying what color of hairs are on the front of the face, but also some bumblebee species have differently structured faces than others. Some might be longer, some might be shorter, and by incorporating a face view, we can be more confident in our species IDs, especially if there are species that have similar color traits that they might exhibit, but might differ in structure of the face. So again, side view, a back view, and a face view are the three different photographs that we want to um, try and get when we're thinking about uploading photographs to BumbleBeeWatch. And then we have those photos. Now we'll actually get to the submission process. So first thing we'll do is find bumblebeewatch.org. You'll either sign in or register. If you haven't registered for an account, it's just as easy as any other platform. You just give yourself a username, email, password, and some other basic information about yourself. And once you've made your account on BumbleBeeWatch, you can navigate your way to that left-hand panel where it says Add Bumblebee Sightings. And you can click that, and it'll prompt you into the submission process. First, it'll start you here, where it'll ask you to submit your project. If you're affiliated with one of our community science programs, you can find it from the drop-down menu here. In this case, the one that I've selected is Rouge National Urban Park. If you are thinking about starting your own community science program with bumblebees, we will make one for you, and then your volunteers will find that in the drop-down. However, if you're just going out for the fun of it and you're not affiliated with any community science program, you can submit them under the general BumbleBeeWatch option here. Once you've either selected BumbleBeeWatch or your regional project, it'll then prompt you to this bottom panel here, where it'll ask you for some locational info and when you observe these bees. So locations, you'll need to add your location by adding the new location and then define it with a name and coordinates. And you can either pull the coordinates through Google Maps, a Google Maps tool that's embedded into it, or you can just give the X and Y coordinates for your location. And if you go back and you revisit that location, you can find that location existing in the drop-down menu above that's titled Choose from Your Location. So when you define your own location, you can then come back and find it again if you were to go back to that location and observe some more bees. Accuracy, it will also ask you for, and this is just a coarse estimation of how far you were from the pin that defines your site, that defines your location. And it's just a rough approximation between that pin and where you actually captured the bee. So if I go out and I place a pin in the middle of a park, and I went to Totally Cool Park, and I found some awesome bees. I can put a pin in the map at Totally Cool Park, and let's say I walked down a trail and I observed a bee 50 meters approximately from where I put that pin at Totally Cool Park. I can then select the option of 25 to 50 meters, for example, and then that'll tell BumbleBeeWatch that I found that bee about 50 meters in whatever direction from that pin that I gave. And then it'll also ask you for the site, the date of the sighting. Once you give this locational information, it'll prompt you to upload some photos. So for every single individual bee, you can upload up to a maximum of 5 photos. And then it'll ask you for a tentative species ID. There's no harm in getting this wrong because, as I've mentioned, once you upload your photographs, a vetted Bumblebee ID expert will come along and individually verify the identity of your bees. So it'll ask you for a species. You could either use the ID, the field guide that's built into it, to filter possible species IDs based on what you select is showing on the head, abdomen being the bottom part, and thorax of the bee. It'll filter down potential species IDs. I also mentioned that there's a new AI feature in the submission process. And so you can use this to help with your species identification process as well. And basically, if you hit this tool, if you hit this AI button, it will tell you based on the photos that you provided above, what species it potentially might be, and a percentage to indicate the AI model's confidence in that identification. So if it's very, very confident, it might give you one option and tell you that it's 100% confident. If it's a little less if it's a little less confident, it might give you 2 or 3 options and give you a percentage of confidence for each one. You can also try and determine the sex, which we'll go through in a subsequent installment of the series. Really, the only thing you need to do for this part is put in the photos because everything else will be verified by an ID expert. If you get the species wrong, someone will correct it and it won't be used. Like verified BumbleBeeWatch submissions are the only things that will be used by experts throughout North America. So if you do get a species ID wrong, your wrong ID will not be used for any sort of conservation action. So rest assured, there are no consequences for being wrong in your species ID or your sex. Those will be corrected. If you observed a bee on a flower, you can give some extra information by telling us what species of flower you found it on, or if there's any other anything else that's noteworthy about the bee or about the area, you can also give those as well. But again, all you really need are the photos. These are just where the buttons are for the field guide and the AI identification. And if you were to use the field guide, you'll be prompted by this selection menu here. So again, based on what you're seeing in your photographs, you can select what you're seeing on the face, the thorax, and the abdomen, and then it would give you some potential species IDs based on that.